Jushin Thunder Liger, 54 years young, one of the greatest of all time, announced this week that he will be retiring next year at the Tokyo Dome at New Japan's Wrestle Kingdom show. They're doing back-to-back nights, 2 nights instead of 1, at the Tokyo Dome. I assume his final match will be on the first night, and he won't be wrestling both nights, but I don't know that. He is an 11-time IWGP Junior Heavyweight Champion. He tried for title number 12 at the recent New Japan Anniversary show. That was the 47-year anniversary show they just had, and he lost in... I haven't seen it yet, but apparently it was a great match. He lost to Taiji Ishimori on that show. It is appropriate for him to retire in the Tokyo Dome because that is where he debuted for New Japan. He debuted the Liger gimmick anyway on that very first New Japan show in the Tokyo Dome. So the first time New Japan went to the Tokyo Dome, which was in '89, he was on that show. He debuted the gimmick. He had wrestled under, I think, his real name the first several years of his career. Then he created and started using this character, and that is what just took off and gave him the notoriety that he still has today. You know, the trademark mask with the horns and the red and the white. Liger is a former WWE light heavyweight champion. Some people might be asking themselves, wait, what? He was, when? When was he the light heavyweight champion? When did he wrestle, even, like full-time for WWE? This was long before the appearance he made a few years ago in NXT. WWE had a light heavyweight title dating back all the way to the early 80s. And it was defended in a promotion down in Mexico that they had a business relationship with. When that promotion folded in the mid-90s, the title went to New Japan, which also had a working relationship with WWE. Now that ended in 1997. WWE decided they wanted the title back. They were going to start their own light heavyweight division, build it around their newest signee, Taka Michinoku. They saw the success that WCW had with the cruiserweight division, and they tried to replicate that, and they failed. The WWE light heavyweight division was just never at the level of the WCW cruiserweight division, nor was it given the sort of focus and attention that WCW gave the cruiserweights. And so, you know, a lot of those cruiserweights in WCW became really big stars and went on to bigger and better things like Chris Jericho, like Rey Mysterio, and to a lesser extent, you had names like Dean Malenko and Juventud. Well, I guess even Eddie. You know, Eddie Guerrero came in. He was working as a cruiserweight in Chavo. Think of in WWE in their light heavyweight division. How many stars did they make? Not that many. But they wanted to try, so they took the title back. Liger, though, before they did that, won the championship early in '97, and he held on to it for about 6 months. So it is very confusing. It's not the sort of thing you would ever see WWE do today, where they create a title under their name and send it off to some other promotion to be defended. You just wouldn't see it. But that is why Liger, for about 6 months there, was a WWE light heavyweight champion. He had a few different runs himself in WCW, one in the early 90s, again in the mid-90s. That's the one that I remember from, you know, the Nitro days. He had a classic match against Brian Pillman back at Super Brawl 2, which would have been back in 92. And the two opened the very first Monday Nitro at the Mall of America in 95. The very first match on the very first Nitro was Jushin Thunder Liger against Brian Pillman. I don't remember it being necessarily as good as the Super Brawl match, but still a very good match. He also beat Rey Mysterio in their one and only singles match at Starrcade 96. Now, they were due for a rematch last year. New Japan had that Strong Style Evolve show they were doing out in Long Beach. It was a year ago this month. And they had set up the match. Rey Mysterio one-on-one for the first time in, 22 years it would have been, against Jushin Thunder Liger. It was going to be this big match. And Rey hurt his bicep. He suffered a bicep injury. It was touch and go. As it turned out, he had to pull out. He had to pull out of the show. I don't know if they can pull it off, but if there is any way at all to make that match happen this year, because it really sucks that match didn't happen last year. We were so close to it happening. If there's any way at all to make that match happen, if Rey Mysterio could go to Vince McMahon himself and just implore him and say, do me this favor, if he really wants the match that badly, and do the match on a WWE show. I hope they can work it out. Liger... my understanding is his deal is much the same contract that he had with New Japan even years ago when WWE brought him in to work that one NXT show. He's a freelancer. He has the power and the authority to book his own shots in different promotions all over the world, even promotions that might be seen as a competitor to New Japan. So I would not outright disqualify this as a possibility. And of course, even if New Japan was okay with it, that doesn't mean that WWE would want to do it. I think Rey would have to just sort of, plead and make his case for it. And Vince will probably just shoot it down. I mean, Chris Jericho tells the story of going to Vince McMahon and saying, look, I got this great idea. I have the IWGP Intercontinental title. I'd like to come back and wrestle Seth Rollins. And Rollins at the time was the WWE IC champion. And this would have been a couple of years ago at SummerSlam. He pitched the idea of a champion versus champion match at SummerSlam. And he said Vince never got back to him. Now that, I could kind of understand that. But, can't hurt to pitch the idea. Worst thing they could do is say no, or just ignore you and shoot you down. But he does have the ability to book his own shots outside of New Japan. If WWE were to be open to it, boy, would that make for one hell of a WrestleMania match. Liger's going to be in town that weekend. He's going to be in town for WrestleCon and maybe some other things, WrestleMania weekend. It's not too late. I mean, I'd like to see Rey and Almas do something at WrestleMania, but that's the one match I'd be okay with not doing Rey and Almas. Do that some other time. If they could somehow find a way to book Rey Mysterio and Jushin Thunder Liger at MetLife Stadium, can you imagine that match? He fought one MMA match in his career. He was not an MMA fighter. But back in 2002, Minoru Suzuki, the scariest man in wrestling, who does come from a legitimate fight background, his opponent pulled out of this MMA fight due to an injury. And into his place stepped Jushin Thunder Liger, mask and all, although I think he was wearing kind of a different mask for this fight. But he was wearing a mask. He got his ass kicked. But points to him for trying. Takes balls to step into a real fight against Minoru Suzuki, especially when you've never fought before. One of my favorite things is Liger on some Japanese game show, sneaking into the bedrooms of various New Japan wrestlers, and believe me, this is not going to a bad place, but sneaking into the bedrooms of all these New Japan wrestlers, trying to pin them in their sleep before they can kick out. He's got a referee with him. They're tiptoeing into the room. Hiroshi Tanahashi, naturally, the only person to kick out at one, of course. I have no idea what the purpose was. Again, it was just some random Japanese game show. If you've never seen Japanese game shows before, they're fucking weird. And so that's just one of the more memorable things that I can remember is last year, the year before, they got Liger in his full costume to do this, and it's funny as shit to go back and watch. Now, Liger said in this press conference he gave this week that he wants to work the New Japan Ring of Honor show at Madison Square Garden next month. He became a wrestler in the first place, he said, because he was watching Tatsumi Fujinami wrestle on MSG. So it would mean a lot to him for what I believe would be the first time in his career and the last time to be able to say that he at least had one match inside of Madison Square Garden. I hope he does get that match. I hope he is there so I can see him live one last time. The last time I saw Liger live and in person was that takeover match in Brooklyn that he had with Tyler Breeze. And Liger posing with Breeze's selfie stick in mid-match, that will never not be funny to me. Look, if they put him in the Hall of Fame one day, they'll have footage of him at least in a WWE ring they can use. I wonder if that was even just part of the reason they even brought him in the first place. It was William Regal who invited him to come in and wrestle a match at TakeOver. But I wonder if part of the mindset was, let's get footage of this guy in our ring. So if we ever do induct him or put some kind of video together for him one day, we'll at least have footage of him inside a WWE ring. When you look at his body of work and you look at the career that this guy has had, he's had a remarkable career. And surely when you talk about Hall of Fame and things like that, he belongs in there. I think of this weekend coming up next month. I keep thinking of WrestleMania weekend next month. Madison Square Garden. Then the night after that, he wrestles at WrestleMania against Rey Mysterio, his one and only WrestleMania. It's not impossible. Some things are just impossible. I don't think this is impossible. I think it's unlikely. But holy shit, what a frickin' awesome weekend that would be. Now, Hiromu Takahashi, who's been out for a very long time now, he broke his neck. Was it last year or the year before? But he broke his neck a while ago. It was questionable if he was ever going to be able to come back. It sounds like he is going to come back, and he's going to come back fairly soon. He commented and said that he would like to wrestle Liger before Liger retires. Maybe the Tokyo Dome show next year. Maybe that's the match. Maybe it's Hiromu against Liger on the January 4th show. But the success and the longevity that he has had in the business, in this gimmick, in this character, is something that puts him in some very rare, very elite company. You know, when you think of what is the greatest WWE gimmick of all time, the greatest WWE creation, you think of The Undertaker. And look at the longevity that The Undertaker has had in that character. Well, Liger, in a lot of ways, is the same way. He debuted that character a year before Undertaker debuted his character. And he is as big of a name now, probably, as he has ever been. He's wrestled all over the world. He's wrestled tons of legends. He's done serious matches. He's done comedy matches. And so I think you can make that comparison. It's just this long-lasting legacy that he leaves behind. And it's going to be sad when he hangs it up, because he could still go. You know, he gets to go out on his own terms. He's not overstaying his welcome like The Undertaker, who absolutely has overstayed his welcome. And I like The Undertaker, but let's just be honest here. A lot of the times he's been in the ring recently has been an embarrassment. And this is from a guy who once said, I don't want to be the old guy who hangs around for too long. Well, take a look in the mirror. Liger, 54 years old, I think he's even older than The Undertaker, he can still go. He's still wrestling at a high level. And he has chosen not to go out there and embarrass himself and ruin the memory that people have of him by staying for too long. People just can't help themselves. He realizes it's time, and he's choosing to step away on his own terms, and I respect that. On the subject of New Japan, the New Japan Cup is underway. The winner will challenge Jay White for the IWGP Heavyweight title at the Madison Square Garden show on April 6th, at the company's anniversary show. This was their 47th anniversary show this past week. Jay White beat Will Ospreay. After the match, 4 of the favorites in the tournament, all of whom have won the New Japan Cup at one time or another: Kota Ibushi, Hiroki Goto, Kazuchika Okada, and Hiroshi Tanahashi, all stood in the ring. It's a great visual. I have it as the headline graphic in our Facebook group right now. This visual of the 4 of them standing in the ring side by side, staring a hole at Jay White. With his back turned to the camera, Jay is facing them. He's standing on the apron. He's got the title over his shoulder. You know, I'm looking at this photo. It's like Avengers Assemble here. You've got all this talent side by side in the ring. Of those 4, it's got to be Ibushi or Okada, I think, winning this. I'm going to go with Ibushi to win the entire thing. I think Ibushi is going to win the New Japan Cup. I think he's going to go and get a shot at MSG. Ibushi had a match with Naito on night 3 of the New Japan Cup earlier this morning. I will not spoil the result, because if I do, I'll get yelled at by people who haven't watched it yet. But yes, the New Japan Cup is in progress. Ibushi is my pick, and I am looking forward to seeing which championship match we're going to get at the Garden.